A young man in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, stabbed 5 of his friends to death. He stabbed 5 people to death. And that is apparently the worst mass killing in the history of the city. That has not been the only recent knife incident of people being stabbed. There have been in the last, let's say, in April or March or April 2014, there have been or at least a number of stabbings being reported in the media. And according to at least one headline said that this might be the year of the knife, to quote or paraphrase what they wrote. Now, in my opinion, knives are much safer than guns. I would rather see people killing each other with knives than people killing each other with guns. And I will explain why I feel this way. First of all, actually, the whole so-called knife stabbing epidemic is most likely a fabrication of the media, just like the so-called shark attack epidemic that happened in the late 1990s or early 2000s or whatever. The media just started reporting shark attacks because they had nothing else to report. There's a school shooting epidemic again. That was most likely just the media reporting a lot of school shootings. I mean, there may have been 1 or 2 school shootings that were unusual in terms of the number of people who were killed, like Columbine or Virginia Tech. But once the media saw that people were interested in school shootings, they just started reporting every shooting in school. Even though school shootings, sometimes there's been lots of school shootings that didn't get in the media, didn't get reported. But so when the media feels like reporting about some subject, they just keep reporting on it, and they can make it seem like it's unusually common, but it happens all the time. So in the case of stabbings, I'm pretty sure people get stabbed all the time, but they don't report it. But at a certain point in time, when people are thinking there's a stabbing epidemic, then the media starts reporting every little stabbing that happens at a high school or whatever on the street. They just start reporting it. The same thing goes for that knockout game thing that they were talking about. That's another thing that I'm sure people get knocked out, people get punched, people get beaten all the time. Actually, in fact, I mean, come on. People, you could walk down the street or be in the city or something, and you'll see people fighting with each other. But the media just chooses to report what they want to report. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is knives are relatively safe, in my opinion, for people who are not involved in a altercation. So if two people or a group of people are fighting and they're armed with knives, they stab each other. Okay, they stabbed each other. Someone got stabbed, but they stabbed the people who they were fighting with. If I'm a bystander, if I'm on the street, I'm going about my business, I'm doing something else, I'm not involved in that altercation, and somebody else gets stabbed, I can see the person get stabbed maybe, or be close to the stabbing, but it does not actually involve me. I'm not actually involved in the stabbing. So a person gets stabbed, too bad for them. It's unfortunate for them, but it's not something that really affects a lot of bystanders directly. Whereas if there's a altercation involving a firearm, or even worse, multiple firearms, you have 2 groups of people who are firing guns at each other, one person firing at another person, two people firing at each other, or multiple people firing at each other. Then you have projectiles, bullets, flying in the air at high speed, and they could hit anybody. They could hit bystanders, especially if you're in a crowded area. So if it's at on a crowded street, on a bus, on in a nightclub, a bar, any place where there's a lot of people, then there's a risk that the people may get, that bystanders who are not involved in the situation in any way at all, may get hit by the bullets. And we have had, even in my relatively low crime area, there have been a number of bystanders who have been hit by bullets, stray bullets. So there's been some woman got shot by people. They were trying to kill another person, and apparently they hit a woman, and she became paralyzed in a wheelchair because of that. There was a kid, a small child, I believe it was a girl, who was shot in the eye when she was sitting on the bus, and some people started shooting. There's a young girl and a young man who were shot a few years ago at a party when there was a shootout between rival groups. There's been several incidents like this. There's some people at a university who were shot as well. Some girls at a university who were shot. Apparently some person was firing a gun for some reason. So this happens. It's relatively common for people to get hit by stray bullets, but you will really rarely hear somebody get hit by a stray knife. If somebody gets stabbed, if somebody stabs another person, they only hit the person who they are targeting, the person who they want to hit. So therefore, for that reason, I believe that knives are a safer weapon from my perspective. So if I was walking down the street and there were a group of people who had a fight with each other on the other side of the street, it would be safer for me if those people were using knives than if they were using guns. If they're using knives and one of them gets stabbed, or one or more of them get stabbed, then that's not direct. That doesn't affect me. But if they have guns and they start shooting, then one of the bullets might come across the street and hit me, when I have absolutely nothing to do with the problem that these people are involved in. It's not my problem, but I get hit by a stray bullet. So that's not a good thing for me. I would rather have them stab each other than shoot each other, because at least if they stab each other, that's not my problem.